Peace, peace, peace. What it is Brother Tyvon Swino, aka the Orthodox Moor. Wishing you all peace and blessings. And I wanted to give y'all just a quick update on some information that just came out today. There's a channel I'm subscribed to called the Emir Stein channel. They got about 175,000 subscribers, and they deal with putting out information that counteracts Islamophobia, etc. And today they happen to put out a very interesting video, a very timely video at that, having to do with Muslims in early America, etc., and Islamic slaves, and also the culture and how it changed and shifted amongst the slaves, etc., and its imprint, etc. And so there were some parts about this I thought that were very interesting that I wanted to share with the people. Two parts in particular. One part having to deal with smashing the phony or flopecy concept, as they confirm some stuff that Abu talks about quite a bit. Shout out to Alonzo. And they also, they confirm two things that Abu talks about, as a matter of fact. They speak about a particular slave that he talks about that was in Florida that ends up going into to New Mexico, if you understand the Mexican history and exploration there, and they talk about that a little bit. But they also talk about Surah 114 being on the pews at First African Baptist Church. I was floored, family. Like, I just saw this and I had to make a live about it. I was in prep for making some responses to Dante. Shout out to Dante. Shout out to Mr. Blacktastic, and shout out to Elder Mike for their responses to him. I want to let the OGs respond first, and then I'll be making my response. But in prepping for that response, I saw this video pop up, and I was like, wow, this is super interesting. So without further ado, family, I'm not going to make this too long of a video. I'm going to put the fair use banner up. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share this short little video for y'all, and I'll let y'all watch the good doctor and them sweat.
Islam has been part of the American religious fabric since the first colonial settlers arrived in North America, and African Muslims were an integral part of creating the United States, from mapping its borders to fighting against British rule. While we do not know exactly how many African Muslims were enslaved and forcibly transported to the Western Atlantic world, scholars believe that roughly 10 to 15% of all enslaved Africans were Muslim, and a much larger number would have been familiar with the religious and cultural practices of Islam due to the religion's spread throughout Western Africa. Despite the fact that there are no concrete records of the number of Muslims, there are remnants of their presence in historical records dating back to the 16th century, and we can also see them in existing cultural and religious traditions today. Although enslaved Africans were not brought to the modern United States for sale until the early 1600s, they were present on American shores around a century earlier. Spanish colonialists brought enslaved Africans, including enslaved African Muslims, with them to Florida and the southern coast as early as 1513. One of these men, Mustafa Azamuri, called Estevanico, was sold by the Portuguese into slavery in 1522. While enslaved by Spanish conquistador Andrés Dorantes de Carranza, Estevanico became one of the first Africans to set foot on the North American continent. He explored Florida and the Gulf Coast, eventually traveling as far west as modern New Mexico. In addition to exploration, enslaved African Muslims also helped militarily expand British American colonial frontiers. During the French and Indian War, which pitted British America against New France, British Major General Edward Braddock was defeated at Fort Duquesne in 1755. The British retreated east and built a line of forts in modern Huntington County, Pennsylvania. One, called Fort Shirley, was quickly abandoned, but not before a blacksmith could forge a small circular charm featuring the phrase, "No God but Allah," in Arabic. This shows the presence of at least one Muslim man in the British military during the colonial period, and hints at a larger community. African Muslims also fought on both sides of the Revolutionary War. Multiple men with Muslim names appear on the military muster rolls, including the patriots Bafat Mohammed, Yusuf ben Ali, also known as Joseph ben Haley, and Joseph Saba. Other men listed on muster rolls have names that are likely connected to Islamic practice, such as Selampur and Peter Salem, whose names may reflect a form of the Arabic salam, meaning peace. These men often distinguished themselves on the battlefield. They also attained high-ranking positions, such as Civil War Union Captain Moses Osman, who was the highest-ranking known Muslim in that conflict. Despite significant obstacles, enslaved Muslims used their faith to build communities, resist their enslavement, and pursue their freedom. They left numerous written accounts of their experiences in America in the form of letters, diaries, and autobiographies, most of them in Arabic. Omar ibn Said penned an autobiography in 1831, the only known autobiography of an enslaved person in a native African language. They also wrote pages of Arabic for their enslavers and other members of white society, like the American Colonization Society. But instead of writing what the recipients believed was a Bible verse or the Lord's Prayer, they wrote Quranic verses, made genealogical lists, and even pleaded to return home to Africa. They also blended Islam and Christianity. For example, they combined the Basmala and Lord's Prayer in documents, and they inscribed Islam into Christian spaces, such as etching Surah an-Nas into a pew at the First African Church of Savannah. This final chapter of the Quran is meant as a protection, in this case symbolically used against their enslavers. Enslaved Muslims also created objects to practice their faith. In the 1730s, Ayuba Suleiman Diallo wrote multiple copies of the Quran from memory for use in devotion and education. And the WPA narratives, a series of interviews conducted in the 1930s and 40s with formerly enslaved persons and their descendants, are filled with references to other important objects of religious practice, namely beads called tasbih and prayer mats. As Katie Brown, the great-granddaughter of Bilali Muhammad, who was enslaved on Sapelo Island, Georgia, recalls, quote, Bilali and his wife Phoebe pray on the bead. They bow to the sun and have a little mat to kneel on. The beads is on a long string. Bilali he pull bead and he say, Bilambi Hakabara Muhammadu. Phoebe she say, Amin, Amin, end quote. However, enslaved African Muslims also experienced open hostility and hardship when practicing their faith. Ayuba Suleiman Diallo was pelted with dirt by a white boy in Kent Island, Maryland, as he prayed. Others were forced to wear sacrilegious clothing, abandon dietary rules and religious fasting, or abstain from the required daily prayers. An unnamed Moorish slave in Louisiana confirmed this hardship in 1822 when he, quote, lamented that his situation as a slave in America prevents him from obeying the dictates of his religion, unquote. Nevertheless, they persevered and lived their faith. Some became pseudo-converts to Christianity in order to protect themselves and their families or secure their freedom. Lamin Kebi pretended to convert to Christianity to secure passage back to Africa through the American Colonization Society in 1834. However, after returning to Africa, Kebi disappeared into Sierra Leone, surely, quote, still retaining his Mohammedan creed, unquote. The Islam initially brought to America by enslaved Africans did not survive many generations, but it left traces and traditions that are still visible today. The practice of ring shout, a form of religious dance in which men and women rotate counterclockwise while singing, clapping their hands, and shuffling their feet, may have been inherited from enslaved Muslims such as Bilali Muhammad and Salih Bilali in the Georgia Sea Islands. The movement mimics the ritual circling of the Kaaba in Mecca by Muslim pilgrims, called tawaf, and the name shout may come from the Arabic shout, meaning a single run. The WPA narratives also contain reminiscences of rice cakes called saraka, which were handed out during rituals and feast days. From the Arabic word sadaqah, or free will offering, this charity is an aspect of zakat, one of the pillars of Islam. And early blues singers, like those recorded by ethnomusicologist Alan Lomax in Levy Camp Holler, employed singing styles reminiscent of the adhan, or call to prayer.
Oh, let her burn down. You can always feel shelter.
They use sweeping and extended vocalizations to fill the words with intense emotions. Enslaved Muslims were brought to the United States with distinct cultural and religious beliefs, caught in the middle of complicated social and legal attitudes from the very moment they landed on America's Atlantic shores. They succeeded in forming networks and communities, and they maintained their religious identity despite overwhelming odds. The material culture enslaved Muslims left behind, books, writings, clothing, beads, and rugs, and the traditions they cultivated help tell their stories today. Islam has always been an important religion in America. It's essential to develop a national conversation that fosters and augments our collective memory of these men, women, and children. One that honors how the call to prayer has been sounding from sea to shining sea for more than 500 years.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
I'm Ayla Aman for the Emir Stein Center.
If you want to see more content like this, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you don't miss any new videos.
What I found extremely intriguing about that video was a few different things. Again, the smash on the forehead of Flopecy, again, mentioning slaves being in the Americas prior to 1619. But then getting into the aspect of, they talked about a certain percentage of people coming over as Muslims, but then a large percentage of people being aware of Islamic culture coming from West Africa. Again, that's because the Islamic culture was the dominant culture in West Africa, and Arabic was the lingua franca. And so they say something that also dovetails into what Boubacar Diakité says in the PBS documentary, and the fact that it's an Arabic type of writing, but they may not have been Muslims. They may have been Christian themselves, and for them, the religion may have been in continuity. They speak about the fact that some of them blended Islam and Christianity. That's a big deal to understand, because you can find that a lot in the writings, to where they talk about pseudo converts to Christianity, but then there's actual converts to Christianity. But when they convert, they still believe Muhammad's a prophet. They blend the two. Some of them don't. Some of them just go straight to Christianity, right? But they know parts of the Quran, because in West Africa, you're learning the Quran. If you're learning the Arabic script, that's how you learn the Quran. That's how you learn how to write, is you learn the Quran, right? And so Surah 114 and the verse written thereof, the God of humanity, whatnot, that's not something adverse to Christianity and whatnot. So when Boubacar Diakité said they may have been Christian themselves, but for them, religion is a continuity. Again, that's not a part of the Quran that's adverse to Christianity. Again, you can also see where Boubacar Diakité is saying that you can see where Muhammad is the messenger of Allah on the pews or whatnot, right? Very interesting, right? But what's even more interesting is on the specific pew here, they see Surah 114, which Abu was saying was a hypothesis. I claimed, like I was saying, no, that's what I think it is, right? He asked me, like, do you think that's what it is? Or what do you think is on the pew? I told him, no, for me personally, I believe it's Surah 114. Right? Abu doesn't make that claim. Abu doesn't think there's any actual discernible language on the pews, right? But shout out to Abu, he didn't believe such, and he literally did work to go find out from other scholars if it was feasible or not, if it was plausible, and got opinions back. Some saying, I don't know, some saying no, and some very high level people saying, yeah, that's exactly what it is. So what's interesting now is that the We Woke Now camp, Benai Israel and them, are going to have to figure out some kind of way to make the Emerson Stein crew part of this crafty council with PBS and this growing pool of scholarship stipulating that Arabic is also, again, I'm not someone who stipulates that there's no Hebrew on the pews. There's this false dichotomy, a false argument that it's Hebrew versus Arabic. No. Again, just like I'm the only person in the community that was claiming and rocks with Surah 114 being on the pews, I was also stipulating that I believe there's Hebrew and other African languages on the pews, right? So just to be clear, let me share my screen right quick. So I was on my channel not too long ago with the Boo and with Vocab Malone, talking about the concept, is there Hebrew on the pews? And I showed Vocab my hypothesis that there is a string of coughs in either Judeo-Bantu or some form of West African Judeo-Arabic. I also showed another pew, again, that is thought to have had potentially 3 different languages on it, right? So there's a pew like where Boubacar Diakite stipulates that he says there is no God but Allah in there. Abu is able to see a similar thing on this pew and postulate a similar reading, even though, again, Abu does not believe that there's any discernible language on the pews. There was another brother that came on my show, Red Judaism, who had never seen it before. We had never talked about it. I just showed it and was like, oh, that says La ilaha illallah. It's like, I don't know what the rest of that stuff says, right? And what's interesting about this particular pew may have Arabic, Hebrew, and Ge'ez on it. It may have a shorthand form of the tetragrammatons on it. It may have a ha and a sa from Ge'ez, and it may have there is no God but Allah in Arabic. And so what's interesting about this, again, and I said this to Vocab with the Boo there as well, right? That you could literally have Christians from all, like from East Africa. You could have some Messianic Jews, and you could literally have some of those Christians who were blending Islam and Christianity with it, right? All in the same area, or people who were from West Africa who were Christians who just knew Arabic, right? And again, all this is important to note because you have Christians in East Africa, and you also have a historic Christian tradition in West Africa prior to colonialism and whatnot, right? And you also have Jews in West Africa and Jews in East Africa, right? So this is all very applicable and whatnot. But again, there is this growing pool of scholarship and opinion. Like you can't. So again, I personally believe there is Hebrew on the pews. I don't believe that there's Solitreo on the pews, right? There's no scholastic evidence for such. And when we examine the cases for it, it's a really weak case. You have people like the We Woke Now, Benai Israel, Boom Church, etc., wanting us to believe this narrative that the slaves didn't come over with Solitreo. They were taught Solitreo by an Ashkenazi mulatto that attended the church. If they want to rock with that, cool. That's no issue, right? They also want to rock with the fact that they don't think many people were dealing with Arabic or etc. in the area. Well, that's been proven to be patently false. And they definitely don't want to deal with the fact that the first time Gullah was written down, it was written down in Savannah, Georgia, by a Mandingo slave who used the Arabic script to write the Gospel of John. They've never responded to that ever. They claim that there's no evidence of Arabic or Islam or anything to the sort in Savannah. However, there is firm documentation to the contrary, and they've never dealt with such. And they're not going to. Just like Dante's not going to deal with any serious claims having to do with the 40 years, etc., etc., etc. So this is going to get interesting, fam, because you can't keep shooting scholarship in the face and expecting people to take you serious. You can't keep shooting scholarship in the face and expecting people to take you serious. But with that, family, I'm going to keep this one short and sweet. I look forward to hearing how all of this is just an attack from the Crafty Council. and how somehow this is just the act of the oppressor and whatnot, right? There's nothing to see here. There's no smoke. There's no fire. There's no nothing. But with that, family, I appreciate y'all. I'm going to hit the outro music and call it a day. Peace and love.
I like the way this feel, yeah. Let my soul cry, yeah, yeah, yeah. Minister, we gonna speak from the heart on this one. I'm performing lyrical funerals, no obituary. I killed your boy and brought him back to life, pet cemetery. My anointing not based on attendance at a seminary. Scarlet witches, they attracted to the visionary. Everywhere I go, I bring the word with me, missionary. Soldier drafted in the war machine, military. Pay attention, what I'm saying to you, legendary. You got the demeanor of a front desk secretary. That mean you take the calls, but you don't make the calls. That's why you hate, cause ain't nothing fake about me at all. Now I dare you try to say that with a straight face. My delivery in tip-top great shape. I'm too advanced for you, light years, space age. No evolution for you cavemen, stone age. I'm a thoroughbred, rock solid. I came from the bottom to the top, rock climbing. I grew up in the hood, pros and cons. That's that full court pressure when the amalanche roll out the stretch. Why can't you see it's not logical? If you live diabolical. Boy, your point of view smaller than the hair follicle molecule. This for all of them that follow you, smoking all of them barbecue. When I pull up, your voice don't correct itself with no auto-tune. I got a whole nother level that I can enter whenever I gotta deal with the devil. I pick a whole nother method. I hear a whole lot of yapping. They wanna see my reaction. Really out here in the community making it happen. I don't really think they understand the dilemma. They ain't looking in the man in the mirror. I can't say it any clearer. The plan is very simple. It's time to start playing in the temple. Before somebody come and put the can on your temple. Reaching like a baby with his hand for the nipple. The Grand Reaper coming with his hand on the sickle. Hit the van coming with a ram with it. With the van coming get him. I am so glad that I changed up. Made it out of where I came from. Watch for the slide and the hook of the slow ball, fastball, and that change up. That ghetto lifestyle, it changed us. Go back to visit, it ain't changed much. Only difference is now the way that my brain process information. And Satan, but after my license, day one, let me say something. Only reason that I'm still alive today because God's grace is amazing. Just another raisin in the sun. Dream deferred when things occur. Now you getting served right on the curb like a lemonade stand. I just gave you the benediction, let the whole church say amen.